And so in IIT, there's this exclusion postulate that I think holds that even though a single cell could be conscious as a organism by itself, our individual cells in our body and in our brains are not conscious because they're part of a greater whole. Have I got that right?
Yeah, so it addresses the question that Aristotle wrote quite a bit about, and that the science of mereology tries to study. You know, what's the relationship between the parts and the whole? And it says, yeah, at any given point in time, there's only one whole. You know, whole, W-H-O-L-E. And so my brain is conscious, or let's say my posterior hot zone is conscious, but my liver isn't conscious, or my cerebellum isn't conscious. Now, if I take an individual neuron, you were just asking me, isn't it possible, at least according to IT, that single cells are conscious? And yes, it may be. So if I take a single cell out and cultivate a single of my nerve cells out and somehow can cultivate it in a dish, yes, it may have an itsy bits of feeling. But when I put it here back into let's say my cortex, and it connects with everything, then it's subsumed. There aren't a billion, you know, there may be 100 billion neurons in a human brain, but there aren't 100 billion consciousness. There's only one consciousness, namely the dominant one. Now, this is interesting consequences. For example, it says there is no group consciousness. There's you're conscious, I'm conscious, but there isn't a James Christof consciousness. Now, it also gives rise to all sorts of thought experiment and something I call bridging. So let's say we start, now we're clearly interacting, right? You're asking me a question, I'm answering, you're asking back. So there is some level of interaction, but IIT always says, well, what is conscious is always the local maximum of causal information. So given the vast amount of information that's exchanged within my cortex and between the left and the right brain, there's only a tiny bit of information exchanged between us. So the local maximum is my brain and the local maximum is your brain. But if we had a sufficient powerful technique in 10, 20, 50, 100 years that we can, you know, let's say build an artificial corpus callosum between your brain and my brain, where now we take, you know, 1 billion neurons from me, we take their output wires and we connect them to 1 billion neurons of you and vice versa, just like the corpus callosum. Then the theory says there will be, if I keep on adding neurons, early on, I'm still me and you're still you. I might be able to see what you're seeing, but I'm still Christof. But now through those wires, I can see, so that's what James is seeing. You know, it's a little bit like augmented reality glasses, but you're still you and I'm still me. But the theory says there's a precise point, namely when the amount of wires between us is so big that the amount of integrated information between us as a whole exceeds the integrated information in your brain and in my brain. At that point, abruptly, you will disappear and I will disappear. We will cease to exist. Christof, I mean, the consciousness, the mind, your mind and my mind will cease to exist, and there will be this new Ubermind, which is some amalgamation of you and me. Okay? And so this mind will be a single unified mind, not two, just one. It will have two bodies. It can control, you know, 4 legs, 4 limbs. It can speak with 2 mouths, but it's one mind. This is bridging. And then you can, if you cut those connections, then you find yourself back in your body. Your mind is back in your body, and my mind is back in my body. So in principle, again, you can test it. You can think about how you can test this with mice. In principle, you can take 2 mice, and if you have the right technology, you know, you could connect them in such a way that they become one larger organism with one conscious mind.